Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Our Love Story with the amazing Diana. Diana, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Doing really well. Always good to see you. I love this time of the month.
Likewise.
It also means that the month is nearly over.
It is indeed, right? We're less than a week away from Thanksgiving.
Yes, in that crazy season. Are you getting excited about it?
Excited is a word. Yeah.
What's a better word, Anna?
It's like good anxiety and like stressful anxiety, like all rolled up into one, right? Like there's just so many more things that, end up on our plates, having to navigate and having to juggle, and, more people are involved if you have family visiting and like all that stuff, you know what I mean? So it's just a lot more on an already like potentially busy plate, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Excited, yes, for the joy of it, but also like, okay, let's just take this one step at a time so that we don't get overwhelmed with all the things.
Yeah. All the more reason to keep our tools at the forefront, all the more reason to maybe be a little extra sensitive to our partners and to ourselves, really.
Totally. And make your expectations known. If you need help, ask.
Yeah. No kidding. And that's always a tough thing for us moms, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Or any default parent.
True that. Asking for help is hard. So I am so here for this conversation right now that we're about to have. So here for it. So last month we talked a bit about the Love is Blind show.
Yes.
And I loved that conversation. There were some great insights that came out of that just by watching human nature and by watching them go through this couple thing.
It's like sociological experiment, right?
Yeah, it's really eye-opening. But that conversation got me thinking more about something that actually legit happened to me in the last couple of months in terms of, I feel like most everybody has a show that they like to watch with their partner, or maybe that's a thing. Maybe it's multiple shows and, you get together, maybe it's an hour or two on the couch at night, whatever it is. And that's your time to watch your show together. Mm-hmm. Although, I'm finding, and I know that you have a couple of shows that you watch, so tell me what your take is on this, but I'm seeing this out in social media land. I'm seeing it play out in my life. I'm seeing it play out in the lives of my friends and family members. Sometimes these shows can trigger us in terms of our intimacy in our own relationship. Case in point, the show that I'm watching, so all the women that are watching the show right now that are hearing this are going to be like, oh, yes, we know, we feel this too. I just know it because Yellowstone, right? There's this character on Yellowstone. This guy's name is Rip. He is, I hate to do a spoiler for people who might not be watching the show or maybe just started, but he does end up becoming the husband of the landowner's daughter. And she's like a really big character. And what is incredible about him is he's this kind of quiet, except for not when he needs to be, just very strong, masculine man's man that loves his lady no matter how crazy she is, and just has this ability to calm her, to ground her, and will literally stop at nothing to protect her. And she gets herself into some trouble. So he gets into some situations for her. Mm-hmm. But it's almost like that prince and he's not even a prince, like he's too rugged to be a prince, right? But it's just that ideal vision that I think a lot of women may carry, and he just totally fits that bill. So in what ways do you feel as a counselor, as a certified couples counselor, that the portrayal of relationships in TV shows can influence couples' expectations of one another? Because and I'm seeing these reels all over. And again, it happened in my own life. I'm just like, buck up and be more like Rip. And I know other women are feeling it. So like that causes problems though, Diana. That's not fair to your spouse.
Sure. Comparison, right? Like comparisons rarely turn out the way you want them to in a positive way, right? Yeah. Yeah, it can absolutely influence like our expectations, like for our partner, like what we feel like they should be doing, right? But if they're not doing that, and you were to communicate like, hey, I want you to be more like this person on TV, or like emulate more of these qualities or behaviors, is your partner really doing it for the right reasons, or are they doing it performatively because you told them to and they felt, perhaps shamed or guilted into behaving a certain way, right? And then it's not really genuine. It's not really coming from them because they want to, and it's probably not going to be very sustainable as a result, right? But comparing to, fictional characters that we only see a little bit of a snapshot of, right, feels like it can create some unfairness like in the relationship, right? Because as we know, like media shows us like what, like it tells a story, like it shows us what we want to see. We don't see all the blind spots, we don't see all the corners of every character. And it's a character, it's a story, you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily all the, deep dark other corners and aspects of a person's personality, you know what I mean? You're only seeing like tidbits of it, you know what I mean? But having an expectation for someone to be somebody that they're not could potentially like cause problems in the relationship for sure.
Yeah. And I feel like what you said is huge. And we really have to keep that in mind, because come on, these shows they want to make money. They want to pay these actors. These actors want to make money, the whole, down the line. And so if they don't hook you emotionally, then what are the chances that you're going to continue to be part of their audience? So I feel like a big giant part of that is, yeah, so this show Yellowstone, it's kind of like I said, like kind of rugged cowboyish, but how are we going to hook the women into a show like that, right? So obviously this guy came along to hook the women, and he's doing a damn good job, I will tell you. But I feel like we have to keep that in mind.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to bust any woman's bubble out there that, watches Yellowstone and has this image in their head of like, oh, this is what it must be like to be in a relationship with him or married to him. But like the show doesn't show you, like, does he like put his laundry in the laundry basket? Does he wipe off the sink after, he brushes his teeth or shaves or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, what are some of those like mundane, like everyday interactions that couples have that sometimes can create some sort of tension or conflict when it comes to roles and responsibilities and things like that? You know what I mean? So it is very fictionalized, and nobody's perfect. You know what I mean? Sure. It feels like the most admirable aspects or the qualities that are most attractive of this character to women is like the being able to control his reactivity, right? And so like the reactivity is coming out at appropriate times where a woman would be like, yeah, like, defend me, like fight for me, that sort of thing, not when it's directed towards her, you know what I mean? So he's like controlling so much of his reactivity in a way that's very rare and very difficult to do, right? When you're only directing it in one direction, when it's a good time, when the woman wants you to, right? It's not like being able to control his reactivity across the board. It's just in these specific situations that seem like heroic or chivalrous or what have you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's the emotional intelligence aspect of that too.
Right. Plays a huge part in it. So it's funny that you say that, because I actually had a conversation with my therapist about this because it was a thing. And so I brought it up to her and we talked a lot about it. And she sort of steered me toward a more positive way of looking at it. And she's like, well, let's find the things in your husband that currently exist that do align with what you're currently infatuated with. Like, let's find those things. And that was really helpful. And maybe you can give a little bit more insight on that, or how someone would do that. But that was difficult to do at first. It wasn't like my knee-jerk reaction was to attempt to find the things that align. It was more to point out the things that don't align.
Right. Yeah. And our brain typically goes there, right? It's like, these are the things that don't align. These are the things that I don't want. These are the things that are not happening, rather than, well, like, where are the things that I'm grateful for? You know what I mean? That you do, or how you behave, or any of those things, right? So our brain does naturally go to comparison, usually like in a negative way, if that makes sense. But finding the good qualities like in your partner is going to not only challenge whatever narrative you have in your mind of like what a partner should be like, but it helps create like that culture of gratitude in a relationship for, admiring the aspects of your partner and accepting their influence of your partner, the things that you do like, things that you do appreciate, because you're not going to appreciate everything, because we're all human beings, right? Just like they're not going to love all of the things that we do either, but we're all imperfect, flawed human beings. You know what I mean? And there are other little, again, blind spots to everyone's character that only your partner is going to see,
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. What about, is this a thing? How could potentially watching TV together, like that shared activity, 1 or 2 hours a night, whatever, potentially affect the emotional connection and the ability to communicate about these sensitive topics, including physical, mental, emotional intimacy between you and your partner? Is there a potential issue there?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is like we watch shows for different reasons, right? So like this show Yellowstone that you're referring to, like a guy is probably watching it for different reasons than then the woman's watching it for different reasons, right? So like while one is really here for the story or for the plot, somebody else might be here for, different reasons or whatever.
The eye candy.
So talking about those things in relationships, like I think it's a good like jumping off point to say like, oh, I think it's really interesting, or I think it's really cool or admirable, or insert word here, that, when she was doing this or behaving this way, like this was his response to her, you know what I mean? As just like an objective talking point, not as a like, well, why don't you do that? You know what I mean? Like, why don't you do that when I get upset? Or, changing your own behavior to see how he responds. And then you get disappointed when he doesn't respond the way the guy on the TV does. You know what I mean?
Right.
So those objective conversations are really good and healthy conversations to have, just as long as you're not comparing, characters to your partner and their characteristics and their behaviors and things like that. You know what I mean? And not only are we getting like different things out of each show, we're definitely going to perceive it differently, right? So like while he might say like she's crazy and she's not like, she's super reactive, or, I don't know why he puts up with that or whatever, there's always a woman on the other side to say like, well, he's gentle with her and he helps like calm her down and ground her and, all those things. And so that just shows a lot of like a perspective difference too, but it can also be a very good conversation starter as well. But I do think that it's harder to find shared shows for couples when their reasons for watching it can be so different, Yeah,
I totally agree. And I love what you were saying there, because I have even experienced this myself in my own relationship, where you can take a scene of something that happened and use it as an example. Like you said, see how he reacted when she did X, Y, Z. And I feel like that can help sometimes, maybe when you're having a hard time communicating how you really feel, or you're having a hard time creating that visual for the other person so that they can fully understand what's on your mind and what's on your heart. By using a scene in a movie, or by using a scene in one of the shows to kind of illustrate that. And that's something that I did. It seemed to help. So,
yeah. I mean, if you can remain objective about the point that you're making and not like, why don't you do this? You know what I mean? Or like when we had this argument last week, like if you had just said this, like it would have all been fine. You know what I mean? I don't recommend that. I don't think it's going to get you exactly the outcome that you want there. But sure, like having conversations about the dynamic or the cycle of a conflict, objectively speaking, I think can be like a good conversation for any couple to have.
Do you have any particular strategies or processes that you would recommend to navigate this discussion when somebody might feel triggered, or when somebody might feel even inspired, like we were just talking about, like, when my therapist had me look the more positive way. So that way I could be inspired to find the alignment versus focus on the misalignment. Any suggestions on how someone could navigate that, begin that conversation? Because we do want to be very careful that we don't seem like we're coming at our partner with this fictitious character that they can never live up to, right?
Totally. And that like shouldn't be our goal either, right? To like try to make our partner that we chose long before this show ever came out, you know what I mean? If we're all of a sudden trying to change the rules and we want our partner to be like this guy, like, well, that's not really fair either, right? But to have a conversation to open it up, like, you know, what did you think about that? Or like, that was really interesting. Like, how did you feel about the way that he handled that situation or the way that she responded to him or whatever? Like, that could certainly get the conversation going from, again, an objective standpoint, not a subjective standpoint, right? Like, you wouldn't say that, or, you know, oh, I've said that before and you didn't react very well to it or whatever, you know what I mean? And then personalizing it. Instead, like, let's just talk about it objectively and talk about the behaviors objectively to see like how we feel about it. So just opening up the conversation like that, like, how do you feel about that? Like, that was interesting. Like, I felt like that was, you know, insert word here. Like, what did you think? You know what I mean? And just talking about the behaviors as a whole. But nobody wants to be like compared to somebody else, right? And like this dynamic, this like cultural dynamic with this character in this show for women is like almost intoxicating, you know what I mean? But like if it was the other way around and it was like he was a female character and, you know, she was like admired by like, you know, all these women for who she is, and like all these men were like in love with her and like really like was into her character, and the guy was like, you know, like, I would love if you would say something like that to me, or if, you know, you didn't react like that the last time we were in a conflict, guarantee it's probably not going to go over super well. You know what I mean? So it just goes to show like this interesting like cultural dynamic that we have with these characters, because we put them up on a pedestal because we don't see everything. We only see small tidbits of things. You know what I mean? They're meant to be that way. They're meant to be characters. They're meant to be not real people. You know what I mean? They can certainly have qualities that people in real life share, but comparing anybody in your life to, you know, a TV character, if it's going to be in a negative light, is probably not going to be heard as well as saying, that was really interesting. Like, what did you think about the way that he said that? Or what did you think about the way that she responded to that? You know what I mean? Again, being very objective about it rather than comparing anybody, you know?
I totally agree. And you just said something that opened my eyes a bunch. Because if the shoe was on the other foot and my husband had the same feelings for a female character on this show, Diana, that doesn't feel good all of a sudden. So I think we need to think about that, right? Like, what if, like, when we're approaching these conversations, when we're trying to sift through and regulate our feelings, okay, now what if the shoe was on the other foot and he came to me with this particular topic? Like, how would I feel, right?
Yeah, you might feel like you're not enough, or that you need to change something about yourself to be like something that you cannot possibly measure up to, because the person's not real.
Not real. Exactly.
You know, that person's not real. Doesn't have, you know, a job that's stressful, or stretch marks from having a baby, or insecurities about your body, or, you know, family trauma. Like, none of that stuff comes into play, right? And so that's a real kick to the gut for your self-esteem to feel like I'm not enough. And not only am I not enough, but you are more than okay to bring it to my attention that I am not enough, and that I could be more like this other person that you've seen on TV. And that would make you happier if I was more like that person. Like, how do you measure up to that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't feel so fangirly when you switch the roles, right? Like in our culture, in our society, we fangirl over, like, we've done it forever, right? Like
Yes.
the sexiest man alive on People magazine, right? Like we've been doing that forever. And there's not like, the sexiest woman alive on the cover of People magazine. It's the sexiest man alive in People magazine. You know what I mean? So like we have this whole like fangirl culture that's just like, oh, these silly ladies, that are just attracted to these guys, the George Clooney's, the Brad Pitts of yesteryear, all those things, right? But if it was the other way around, it would be like, oh, are you not grateful for like the partner that you have? Like she's had your baby, she cleans your house, she does, all these things, right? And then suddenly it doesn't feel so fangirly. Suddenly it seems like, well, you've created this character that I'm supposed to measure up to and I can't. So I will never be good enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like the kids say, that feels like the ick.
It's the ick.
Yeah.
Yes.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
What a great conversation, and thank you for having it with me, because again, like, and I don't care, like I don't mind being a little vulnerable here and sharing with others that this stuff affects me and my household too. Like I'm human, I put my pants on just like you guys do, kind of thing. So thank you for allowing for that space too. I feel like I get a little extra counselor time when I'm on with you. Great. So thanks. Is there anything else about this topic that you'd like to add?
I just think I hope that this inspires some sort of conversation with some of the couples out there that may or may not watch some of these shows together. Not just like the fictionalized sitcoms, right? But like reality TV can also set us up for expectations and intimacy that don't quite line up, right? Yeah. And think about the target audience there, right? Like the target audience is women, like for reality TV shows, the dating shows, Love Island, Love is Blind, all of those.
Golden Bachelorette.
Yes, the Golden Bachelor. Like it's all for women, right? Like there's not a lot of men that watch that show. And when they do, again, they're watching it for different reasons, right? They're not watching it for the drama most of the time, like women are, right? They're watching it probably for other reasons. And it is mindless entertainment, right? But, it can really set us up for these weird expectations of like, what should intimacy look like in our relationship, you know what I mean? But we don't think about that. We don't extrapolate to how this actually doesn't translate to real life at all. You know what I mean? This is a very fabricated environment where there's producers and writers and cameras and like, okay, cut. Okay, now I want you to think about this and I want you to say this, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's so like fabricated and insulated and it isn't the real world, you know what I mean? So making any sort of comparison for intimacy expectations to a show like that is probably going to set you up for failure. And if it's something that you feel like you're not getting from your partner, like stay objective about it and try to leave comparisons of other people that are like on TV out of it, because it's not real. It's just not.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we have to keep in mind too, that like you said, these producers are saying, okay, cut, stop, talk about this, answer this question. Like there needs to be a drama. There needs to be like some sort of something going on. Otherwise, it's not going to keep our attention. Like it needs to be something that surprises us, shocks us. We need to see what happens next, kind of thing, right? Otherwise, why would we watch? And then they're not going to get their ratings, which brings their advertisers and all the other things that happen after that. So
absolutely. Like, and it's not, they fabricate and create problems that wouldn't really exist. Yeah. Like in the real world, you know what I mean? Like for the Love Island fans out there, you know who you are. When you're watching that show and you watch those challenges, right? Like these people have been coupled up for like 24 hours, which in there is like a week because you're with that person like all the time, 24/7. You're sharing a bed with them, all of that, right? And then they throw these challenges in there that are meant to antagonize and shake up what's happening, right? So like this challenge of like, oh, you have to kiss like the two most attractive people that are not your partner. Like that's not going to happen in real life. Like that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? And so then like they participate in this challenge because they're on this show. They're like, there's the potential to make money. They're getting their 15 minutes. They're getting more Instagram followers. So they're motivated to do that. Right. And then they do it. And then sidebar, they have these conversations right after these challenges. And they're just like, I just don't like the way that you like kissed her. Like you just look like you enjoyed it. And it's like, oh my God, like this wouldn't happen in real life. Like, of course he did. This is so fake. If this was out in the real world, like, yeah, that's probably going to be a deal breaker for you. Like you've created these false expectations that are never going to translate outside of here. You know what I mean? So it's just something to keep in mind when you are watching it. It's like, it's not real. It's not real.
Right.
It's fun and it's mindless and it's entertainment. You know what I mean? But if you're finding yourself thinking like, oh, I wish my partner acted more like that, like more like what exactly? Like what is exactly what quality or behavior that you're looking for? And like zoom in on that and talk about that objectively with your partner. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. And it could be constructive. There could be like, we've had some really
Totally.
great conversations and it's been very positive that's come out at the end of it. And I think it, obviously depends how you conduct that conversation, like you mentioned throughout the show, and how you approach that conversation. Those are definitely two important parts of it, but it can be a positive thing and it can be an eye opener, and it can, I feel like it can cause you to even become closer and learn more about one another.
Sure. Absolutely.
Awesome, sister. Well, thank you so much again for being with us. You're still doing your consultations for our people out there that need your services, right?
Absolutely. You can go to my website. It's dianaiseltherapy.com. You can click in the upper right-hand corner, schedule a free 15-minute phone consultation.
Awesome. I love it. All right, guys, if you want to check out any of our previous episodes, and you definitely have to catch the one from last month, which I'll pop up here in the show notes, the Love is Blind episode, that was kind of the catalyst for this one. So that's like part 1. Here's part 2. Check that out on our YouTube channel. It is at Mom Nation USA. That's our handle. Scroll down just a little ways. You will see what we lovingly call OLS, our love story. And that is this monthly podcast. If you prefer to listen in your earbuds, maybe you run a lot, hike a lot, bike a lot, that's okay too, on your favorite podcast platform. Do a quick search for Mom Nation Talk Radio. There you'll find us, and you can download, click on the little bell to notify, rate us, all the things. That really, really helps us out. And we will see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.